J. Philip Perna. I'm the superintendent for Montauk School. The first meeting was Friday, September 10th, 1926. It's when they created the district out of East Hampton. This building was built in 1927. It's actually the third school building. Actually, when the district was created, it was run by the district superintendent from BOCES 1 out of West Hampton Beach. The teaching principal was Mrs. Matthews. I was hired by Bob Fisher in 73. It's about the same as it is now. There were, I remember, 305 kids total, and right now we have 306, but we added a pre-K. So there's actually less kids now than there were back in 1973. First edition was 1955. Then we added on again in 1965. Then we put relocatable classrooms in 1973. And we did a final edition in 2000. I had Marge Belfontaine, Hank Zabrowski, Brad Dickinson, who still teaches here, Nancy Doherty, Peggy Joyce, Trevor Kelsaw, John Tagliavia, Mr. DeMario. Even though we seem to have the same number of kids, we've added on several times, we don't seem to have enough room, and we seem to have more teachers than ever before. But that goes because of the different programs that are now required. We have 5 special ed teachers and 2 ESL, English as a Second Language teachers. So that's already 9 people, or whatever it is, 7 people.
My name is Dick White. I was born in Montauk in 1941 in February. And the Montauk that I grew up in the 40s had about 600 residents year-round. I lived over the family drugstore in a building that housed the drugstore, the post office, and the liquor store all in one building. And across the street was Sears's Market, the barber shop, and Montauk Tavern, now known as Shagwan. One of the most favorite things about Montauk then, I guess, was, I didn't realize it then, was the small town community. Literally everybody knew everybody because there were so few people. And being the center of the town, we got to see most people every day. People would come to the post office and then stop in the drugstore to get their newspaper or various sundries. And of course the drugstore in those days had a soda fountain and had magazines and a large candy selection. So as a young kid, I thought at the time I was a very popular guy. I found out later it was because my dad had all these things in the drugstore that when they came over to my house to play, we would get sodas, or we could read the comics or something like that, and I found out it wasn't me that they were coming to see after all. Fondest memories of Montauk growing up as I got older was fishing in Fort Pond, freshwater fishing and ice skating on the pond in the winter, sleigh riding down Webb's Hill, which is over by the Catholic Church. Do I agree with the changes that are occurring with Montauk? Well, I don't know that I have the choice of agreeing or not. It's just happening. Would I like it to go back to the old ways? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. There are a lot of benefits from having progress here. There are a lot of different people who have moved to Montauk that I've become very friendly with. Of course, the summer is very crowded, and somewhat annoying, but it's something we have to have. It's our economy, and it provides jobs for families and for people growing up here. Unfortunately, the cost of housing has become prohibitive and probably out of the reach for many people who are actually going to be raised here, to go through the public school and high school and have to go someplace else to find affordable housing. What made me stay in Montauk was the fact that I bought the family business and stayed here and raised my three children, who I'm very fortunate, two of whom live in Montauk, and the third one lives in North Haven next to Sag Harbor. So my grandchildren are very close by. What is my favorite time of the year in Montauk is after Labor Day, because the weather is the most beautiful. The ocean water is very warm. It takes all summer to warm up, and then it cools down slowly. And so the falls here are nice. They're crisp nights, warm days, great fishing, great surf casting, not as crowded. Restaurants are not as crowded, and it's just a wonderful place to be in the fall. What are your favorite places? Well, of course, the lighthouse is one of my favorite places. The ocean is a favorite place. Ocean beaches. Although when I go to the beach to go swimming, I go to a very quiet beach, which I won't explain on tape, but it's far less crowded than most. Um, where did I first work in Montauk? Well, I didn't have much choice. Raised, living over the family business. I joke about being an indentured servant. I went to work for my family in the drugstore as a young kid. I'd come home from school, and my dad being a pharmacist, we had prescriptions that had to be pasted in a book, and they had to be pasted in chronologically and so forth. So that was one of my jobs after school. Later on, I was a soda jerk and then a stock boy. And then as I got older, I worked in the liquor store and ultimately bought the liquor store. One of my favorite things that I did as a young man growing up here was, in those days, the cattle used to come into the railroad station by cattle car, and they would offload the cattle car and put them in a snow fence pen overnight, where they would water them down and give them hay. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, we would go out to the ranch, saddle up our horses, ride our horses to town, and we would get there at daybreak and open the fence and then drive the cattle up Edgemere Road, and then the ball field wasn't there then, and we'd cut across where the post office is now. There was nothing there but open fields. And then we'd go up the highway to East Lake Drive, and then drive them down East Lake, where there were very few houses. There were maybe one or two houses on East Lake, and only part of it was paved. And we would put them in the fields there, because there were no houses at all in that section of what is now the county park. And also Startop Ranch wasn't there. None of the houses were there. So we had about 1,000 acres of grazing land for the cattle. And to have that experience was unforgettable, which they don't do it at all anymore. Montauk in the beginning, back in the 16 and 1700s, really existed solely as a grazing area for the eastern end of Long Island. They used to drive cattle from as far west as Patchogue out to Montauk, and they had sections of Montauk that were segregated for sheep and goats and cattle and horses and oxen, anything that would require grazing fields. So that was one of the highlights of my years growing up here. Also, duck hunting was one of my favorite pastimes as a young lad. The worst memories of Montauk was the impending hurricanes. The 1938 hurricane, before I was born, blew apart our building, blew out the front and side walls, which had to be repaired. And of course, other people had worse damage. They had their houses moved off their foundations if they lived in the village, which was on Fort Pond Bay at that time.
My name is Judy Seslow. They were fabulous because we were at the hills camping out for the entire summer. I never had a pair of shoes on except on Sunday morning to go to church. And then when we got back to Queens in September, my feet hurt when I put the shoes on them. My poor old feet. Just being free, especially in Hither Hills. We had the ocean right there and square dancing every Friday night and packs of kids running wild. No discipline. Navy Road right over there to the beach. It's filled with strangers now in the summertime. Favorite places, yeah. And the lighthouse. I used to like to go up to the lighthouse, but now they charge so much money to park, I don't go anymore. At the Montauk Diner, where the Point Restaurant and Bar is now, and I was a car hop out in the back in the gravel wearing red pedal pushers. I didn't last at that too very long because I dropped a few trays full of food.
What was your favorite?
Just being so free and being able to go to the beach every single day without driving for an hour and a half or two. And then after I moved out here, we would go to the ocean beach every single day with little children.